Look at a map of the United States and just wonder how it got so big? I mean, it's this incredible story, right? Full of epic ambition, some really shrewd deals, and yeah, some pretty fierce conflict. So let's get into it. Let's explore how the map of America was drawn one state at a time.
So where do we even start? We have to go all the way back to right after the American Revolution. The brand new United States, well, it wasn't much to look at on a map. It was really just this thin sliver of a nation. Basically 13 former colonies, all bunched up against the Atlantic Ocean.
This was it. This was the starting point. Just a narrow strip of land, and to the west, a massive, completely untamed wilderness. The nation's future was basically a blank page. So the big question is, how did
this, the sprawling 50-state nation that we all know today? That leap from a little coastal republic to a continental giant is honestly one of the most remarkable stories in modern history.
Our story really begins with that seed, the original 13 states. They're fresh from their victory over the British. The Treaty of Paris gets signed in 1783, and boom, the United States is officially on the world map. But, you know, this was just the first stroke of the pen. The canvas was about to get a whole lot bigger. How do we wrap our heads around this epic journey? Well, we can break it down into a few key moments. We start with the nation's birth in 1783. Then comes a pivotal purchase in 1803 that changes everything. By 1848, the country reaches the Pacific, and finally, believe it or not, it takes all the way until 1959 to add the final two pieces to the puzzle.
Let's talk about that first major expansion, because it was a total game changer. In 1803, the United States made a deal that would forever, and I mean forever, alter its destiny. $15 million. That was the price. That's what President Thomas Jefferson paid to France for a vast expanse of land. Now, in today's money, that's an unbelievable bargain. But even back then, it was an absolute steal. And what the U.S. got in return was just staggering. The United States acquired 828,000 square miles of land. This wasn't just adding a small piece of property. This was a landscape-altering acquisition we now know as the Louisiana Purchase. Single purchase. The United States literally doubled in size, almost overnight. It pushed the nation's border all the way to the Rocky Mountains, and it ignited the great westward migration that would come to define the entire 19th century. With this vast new territory to explore, the United States gets gripped by this incredibly powerful idea that it was destined to stretch from sea to shining sea. This belief, known as manifest destiny, would drive the next chapter of expansion, and it was a chapter written in both treaties and manifest destiny. The belief that American expansion wasn't just a good idea, it was preordained, that it was meant to happen. Now, while it fueled incredible growth, it was also used to justify the displacement of Native Americans and the conquest of new lands. It was a powerful and definitely controversial idea that shaped the nation. Propelled a series of major acquisitions. You've got the annexation of Texas in 1845. Then the Oregon Treaty with Britain in 1846, which secured the Pacific Northwest. And then, the most significant one, the Mexican Cession in 1848, which came after the Mexican-American War and added the land that would become California, Nevada, Utah. So by the mid-1800s, the U.S. had reached the Pacific. But the map was still this big patchwork of established states and these huge unorganized territories. So what did it actually take for one of those territories to earn its star on the flag? There was a pretty well-defined journey. First, Congress would set up a territory and appoint a governor. Then, once the population hit 60,000 residents, that was the magic number, the people living there could write their own state constitution. And this was the key step. With that constitution in hand, they could formally petition Congress for statehood. For decades, territories became states, one by one, filling in the map of the American West. But the final two pieces of the puzzle, well, they were different. They were separated from the rest of the country by thousands of miles of land and sea. Of course, about Alaska and Hawaii. Alaska was purchased from Russia way back in 1867 and was seen for a long time as just a frozen wasteland. Hawaii was an independent kingdom until it was annexed by the U.S. in 1898 after American businessmen overthrew the monarchy. So they had very different paths, but both of them became states in the same year, 1959. Completing the 50
as this quote suggests, their admission was really seen as the final chapter in that long story of manifest destiny. It was the thing that completed the map as we largely know it today. The journey from 13 to 50 was finally over.
That brings us to today. The 50-star flag has flown now for over 60 years. It's a symbol of a nation that's complete. But history is never really finished, is it? With the ongoing calls for statehood for places like Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., you have to wonder, is the map of America still being drawn?